and this will be sent out sometime tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. It'll come via email. So if you do want to go back and reference anything that's covered during the session, you can certainly do that. Also attached to that recording is a questionnaire. We value the opinion of both our students and alumni, and we want to make sure that we hear what you might have to say. So take the time, fill out that questionnaire. It should take you no more than 2 minutes to fill that out, and that is attached to the recording. So if you could make sure that you are filling that out. There will be opportunity to jump in and ask questions throughout the presentation, so feel free to do so. The chat is open, so if you do have questions, you can certainly post those into the chat, and then during those designated Q&A times, I'll allow people to take themselves off mute if you would like to go ahead and do that and ask any question you might have, or if you're more comfortable with the chat, you can certainly do that as well. One thing I know I certainly like to do is those that have joined us this evening, if you could in the chat, where are you calling in from? We like to do this. Obviously, our populations are spread all over the place. So if you could in the chat, where are you calling in from this evening? We would appreciate it. And then from here, what I will do is I will pass it over to the JLL team. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, RJ. We really appreciate the invitation to come and present today and talk a little bit about JLL. And we'll introduce ourselves and who JLL is and the opportunities that we have here shortly. But kind of want to jump into today's session and give everyone an opportunity to check in. So if you've got a phone device handy and you scan over this QR code, it'll take you to an event page to be able to register for this event. Basically what this does, it allows us to continue to message you about opportunities. So if you're interested in what you heard today, we'll be able to kind of continue that conversation, but also let you know of opportunities that come available here at JLL, as well as potentially match you to open positions. We'll also be adding folks in after the session as well. So if you missed it or you're joining on your phone, don't worry about it. We'll make sure to get you that information from RJ and the team before we go in there as well. But without further ado, I want a chance for our presenters to introduce themselves. So I'll have Shayna start and introduce herself.
Russell, hi, I'm Shayna Fitzsimmons, and I am a team lead here on the talent acquisition team for our sourcing and attraction folks over in the Americas region. And I've been with JLL for 6 years. I'm based out of New Jersey, right outside of New York City.
My name is Michael. I've been a recruiter here with JLL on the property management side for about 3 years. I'm responsible for all of our Western and Central operations, and I am based in Denver.
Awesome. And hi, everyone. My name is Russell Avasian. I'm the Director of Early Career Recruiting here at JLL. I'm based out of Chicago, but I just saw that Edith is joining from Salt Lake City. That's my hometown, so joining Chicago by way of the West. And I oversee all of our recruiting initiatives for internship and entry-level rotational programs here in the United States as well as in Canada. And so I work with a really great team of recruiters. And I've asked Shayna and Michael to join us today, as well as Linda, who will introduce herself a little bit later in the presentation, because we wanted to give you a really good overview of who JLL is, as well as the various opportunities we have available both at JLL all across the country. And so my team oversees a lot of our entry-level or internship type positions. And I know Shayna and Michael have a lot of expertise and knowledge in positions outside of that as well. So I wanted them to be here to talk about JLL, but also answer some of your questions as well. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk a little about who we are. We've said the word JLL. What does that mean? Who are we? We'll jump into that first, and then I'll pass it over to Shayna to talk a little about our culture and some of the things that we value here at JLL that makes it a really great place to work. I have Linda joining us as well, talk a little about property management and some of the areas of our business that are growing, but also are exciting opportunities for you to jump in and either start your career, jump into a new career, or find ways to really grow your career here at JLL. Michael will then talk about some of the opportunities to start your career. So our resources for joining our talent network and applying for our internships and our full-time positions. He'll go over that, and then we'll definitely have time for questions at the end, as RJ mentioned at the beginning. Starting a little bit with the JLL overview, who is JLL? JLL stands for Jones Lang LaSalle. and we're technically a global professional services firm specializing in commercial real estate. So what that essentially means is that we really support our clients in a broad variety of areas that really support them in their real estate portfolio. So, and I'll show you on the next slide in a second, but that's everything from helping folks buy and sell to managing that facility to then disposing it and selling it at the end of its life cycle as well. So we are not a development firm, and that we don't own property ourselves, but we do consult with our clients on the best ways that they could acquire and use that property as well. So what that means to you is that we have opportunities across the spectrum for everywhere from sales type positions with brokerage and capital markets, and really bringing on new clients in our client services to property management, as well as finance and accounting for all those operations as well. And I know I'm just scratching the surface of what we have here at JLL, but really being a professional services firm means that we have opportunities across the spectrum for folks to really begin their career and start a really awesome opportunity here. We are headquartered here in Chicago. I'm joining you from our world headquarters today in the Aon Center downtown on the 43rd floor. So really great views. I wish it was a little bit sunnier. And we have over 100,000 employees. I've got some great ones that have joined us today and aligned in various offices across the United States as well as globally as well. And the thing that's not mentioned on this slide is that even though we have specific offices in the U.S. for our JLL colleagues, we also manage a large swath of client properties all across the U.S. So even though we may not have all of our JLL employees don't just work out of a JLL office, they work across the country, which really makes this a fun and exciting and dynamic place to work, and that we've got lots of opportunities for growth and development across those areas as well. So let me talk about what we help our clients do. So this is really an overview of the real estate life cycle. And we support our clients in a variety of activities across that life cycle. Starting with acquire, this is probably where you know us most from. A lot of people say that they see our logo everywhere, and really it's on those for sale signs for commercial real estate buildings. So we represent landlords and tenants in helping them buy and sell commercial real estate properties. So it might be a small company that's looking to expand their property here in Chicago and have more floors so they can grow their employee base. Maybe they're looking to, maybe they own, an investor owns, a building, and they're looking to make sure that they have tenants in that building as well. So our brokerage team really helps kind of match them with that as well. And we also help represent those clients in getting the financing and the purchasing power for those opportunities as well, which is also in the fund area. We also help our clients build properties. So it's a lot of, here in Chicago, if you're familiar with things like our old post office, we've helped with the build out of that property from something that was empty and not used for years and years to now being one of the most desirable office buildings in the city. And so our project and development services team really helps support and build out projects from small to large areas as well. We help with property and facility oversight, and Linda's going to talk a little bit more about that as well. And then we help dispose of assets. So that means of properly selling it or subdividing it off into various areas as well. On top of the real estate life cycle, we support a variety of industries and types of properties, office, industrial, retail, you name it. We support a lot of those areas. Data centers is an area that's growing for us as well. And so we not only help our clients acquire those opportunities, we do it across a variety of spectrums in both acquiring as well as helping managing and sourcing that out as well. I mentioned on an earlier slide that we have 6 business lines. You'll see there's 5 listed here. The 6th that's not listed on this screen is our corporate function. So myself and Shana and Michael, we technically are in the corporate functions and supporting all the great work that JLL is doing in all of our markets. But as I mentioned before, we've got markets advisory, which is your property management, leasing, and advisory for buying and selling commercial real estate. Capital markets, which helps match investors and financing so that way they can help build really exciting new commercial real estate properties or help renovate them as well. Work Dynamics, which is our workplace management arm, really helps supporting clients, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but really clients will look to us to help manage their real estate portfolio. They may have a large campus and they want to make sure that the the building is running efficiently and that the employees are having an experience, they contract us out to help support that. And we do a variety of things under that business line as well. JLL Technology is one of our more exciting areas that it continues to grow. Is really like our tech startup within JLL. They're constantly coming out with new innovations to help make our buildings more efficient, but also give real-time data analysis to our clients about the building that they either are occupying or they own themselves. And LaSalle is our investment services arm. It's a smaller part of our company, as you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen. But a big part of Jones Lang LaSalle is LaSalle, and we have got careers in that area as well. So I will pass it over to Shayna to talk a little bit more about our culture and what we value here at JLL.
Thank you, Russell. Yeah, our culture at JLL is truly what sets us apart from our competitors in the market. It's why our employees stay here for such a long time, and some of them for their whole careers. So firstly, we really want to empower you to grow in your career. We will give you the opportunities and tools that you need to own your success and shape your career, whatever that looks like. So we prioritize programs and support to help you grow, and we're committed to helping you refine the skills that you need today and building new skills for the future. We recognize the impact that the workplace can have on your well-being. So we offer a supportive culture with incredible benefits that prioritize not only your physical health, but your mental and financial health as well. And being a real estate company, our offices are of course central to how we work, but flexibility has always been a very important part of JLL, and we encourage all of our people to work flexibly whenever possible. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is really at the core of what we do. We are building a culture where differences are valued and where people feel that they belong. We know that this increases productivity and creativity in our workplace. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our BRGs are business resource groups, and they bring together employees who share identities and characteristics from historically underrepresented populations. These are voluntary groups and led by all the employees to drive meaningful connections across the company. Currently, we have over 12,000 employees in BRGs in over 200 locations. And we also have something that's called Random Coffee, where members of the BRGs can be randomly scheduled for virtual coffee meetings between people who they might not typically work with on a day-to-day, and it allows all of our employees to meet and share experiences. Next slide, thank you. So sustainability is very important to JLL because it facilitates our ability to drive climate action for sustainable real estate and create healthy spaces for all of our people to thrive. We take urgent climate action that accelerates the transition to net zero and enhances performance, as well as helping to shape a better world for our future. And over the last 3 years, there's been an urgency to not only slow, but stop global warming and the effects of climate change. So 80% of corporations that we work with have set climate goals, but only 20% of them have a real action plan. So that's where JLL steps in to fill the gap, and we help our clients reach their goals so we can all create a better world for our future. So does anyone have any questions about anything Russell or I discussed? You can ask us now or save it for the end of the session.
Great. Well, thank you, Shayna. I really appreciate that. And please continue to throw, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll definitely answer them as we continue through the presentation. But I want to transition over to introduce Linda, who's our special guest for today. And the reason we brought her on is to talk a little bit more about Linda's had an amazing career at JLL, and I think will be really exciting to kind of hear those career progressions. Really looks at some of the areas that are growing in our business holistically, and I think really gives a good idea and a good conversation about what opportunities you might be excited to join, no matter where you might be in your career. where we can find a place for you to grow and succeed here at JLL. So I will hand it over to Linda to introduce herself and share with you all kind of her career journey and the opportunities at JLL.
Great, thank you, Russell. So I'm going to talk about property management, which is where I spent the bulk of my career. And then Russell talked a little bit about work dynamics, and I did spend some time in that group as well. So I will talk a little bit about that more at a higher level than I will about property management, which is where I spent the bulk of my career. So as Shayna had mentioned, there are a lot of people that spend the bulk of their career, if not their entire career at JLL, and I am one of them. I joined LaSalle Partners in 1982 as a property accountant and learned about property management and somewhat fell in love with that industry and worked in a number of different markets around the country and a number of different business units and a number of different venues that allowed me to connect with clients all around their real estate in a variety of different ways. I actually retired from JLL when I was running the property management business for the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey market several years ago, and then was asked to come back and help with some recruiting for property management. So I talk to candidates every day, and a lot of them ask me, what I like about JLL. And I thought, well, the people, number one, but then they'd say, well, is it a good place to work? And it's kind of hard for me to answer that without laughing, because you don't spend 37 years of your life in a company if you don't think it's a good place to work and you don't believe in what the company does and its values. So I am one of those people that spent the biggest chunk of my career at JLL. So Russell, if you go to the next slide, we'll jump into property management. So when we talk about property management, I think it's important just to talk about what that means. I always say that all buildings, whether they're beautiful high-rise, skyscrapers, or they're the ugliest building in the business park, they still need to be managed, because all of these buildings are owned by somebody or some company, and they need to be managed well so that they can produce revenue, and that they produce revenue by having tenants that pay rent, and we want those tenants to stay and continue to pay rent. So we'll talk a lot about the specifics as we move, but it's office buildings, it's industrial. Multifamily is a new business that we launched last year, and that's really starting to ramp up. Transportation buildings, think about Union Square, the number of trains that come in, the number of people that go shopping and dining. Union Square is all over the place, by the way, not just in Chicago. Open air retail, enclosed malls, medical office buildings, any kind of real estate, that doesn't. I used to say if it doesn't involve a bed, we manage it, but I can't say that anymore now that we do. Multifamily. So next slide, Russell. Just to give you a sense of the size of our property management business, and this is just in the U.S., so we're only focused on the U.S. today, but it's massive. And the multifamily business that I talked about a second ago that we launched a year ago, we now have 1,200 units under management. So we went from 0 in the beginning of 2023 to 1,200 units, and a new building is going to marketing. Downtown Chicago, the Elizabeth, is going to launch its marketing efforts tomorrow. So that's another 350 units. So that's pretty exciting because it's new. So lots of people that are joining us, getting in on the ground level and really helping to shape what that new product for us is going to be. I can tell you when I look at this slide and I see 529 million square feet of industrial. We started our industrial property management building or business back in 2008. And when I was in New Jersey, that was where we started it. And they came to me and said, we're going to manage these buildings. And I thought, I don't know anything about managing industrial buildings. And why are we going to do this? Little did I know the importance of what industrial buildings was really going to mean to JLL. And if you just look at the office versus industrial, industrial has now taken lead. So it's really cool. And there's so many things that if you want a career in property management, you can get involved in. Next slide, Russell. So when we talk about property management, think it's important to recognize, as I mentioned earlier, that all these buildings are owned by someone or some company. The majority, by a vast majority of our clients, are institutions. So what does that mean? An institution can be a bank. It can be a real estate investment trust, otherwise known as a REIT. It can be high net worth, hedge funds that created funds to own real estate. It's pension funds. It can be a number of different entities that own these. And when those companies or those funds and their fund managers hire JLL to manage their buildings, we have to look at that building as a business, right? So I referenced tenants that pay rent. That's the income that comes into the building. And then all of the expenses that go out to manage that building, the cleaning, the utilities, the repair and maintenance, just making sure that building is running, and all of the staff and the cleaning people and the security people, everybody that touches that building to make it run, it is a business. When I trained new people and we would talk about managing the financials, I would say, just think of it as a massive checkbook, and you've got to make sure you're tracking every penny that comes in and every penny that goes out. So that property manager needs to act like the CEO of that business. They run that building. They stand in the shoes of the landlord. We all stand in the shoes of that landlord, but that property manager, it is really their baby to make sure that it's running. They're responsible for a whole host of things, which we're going to get into when Russell flips the slide, please. When we think about property management and we think about it like running a business, every element of running a business comes into play every single day. So financial management, right? Making sure budgets get created, managing those expenses, reporting to the client, right? Just like you might want to balance your checkbook at the end of every month. I'll tell you, I do a better job of managing the finances of buildings that I ran than my own. But you want to make sure did every tenant pay the rent? Are all of the bills paid? Do we have enough money coming in to make sure we've got funds for every expense that we know is coming down the pike? So there's a lot of administration around expenses and around managing financials that go into play. And I will tell you that is something that will be important in almost any career, that the financial, understanding how financials work and having that financial acumen. Lease administration, we're managing all of those leases every day to make sure that the tenant is doing what they're supposed to and that the landlord, we are doing what we're supposed to. You're dealing with tenants and clients and building relationships. Things go wrong sometimes in a building, just like no matter what you're doing, something can go wrong. It's so much easier to manage through a conflict if you've developed a relationship with your tenant, with your client, so you can talk about things, so that you can share ideas and share experiences and work through solutions together. So having the ability to develop relationships, trusting relationships, is critical. Operations, right? That's running the building all day, making sure everything is humming the way it's supposed to, and making sure we know what to do when something goes wrong, having a plan. Capital projects, capital projects or anything that is going to extend the life of the building, of equipment, something that the landlord is responsible for and maybe not the tenants. As a property manager, you're a player coach every day. You're training people that work on your team so that they can get better and they can elevate their career. One of the things that I think is tremendous about JLL across all of our businesses is that we really work hard to promote people from within. So if we're all doing our jobs right, we are trying to train everybody that is at a lower level to take our jobs so we can move into a more senior role. And it works, but it really means everybody's got to be a player coach all the time. You're always representing the firm. No matter what role you're in at JLL, you always are representing JLL and making sure that you're putting the firm in the best light. And that means sometimes we have to swallow hard, we have to take criticism, we have to own our mistakes and fix it, right? That's what matters the most, is just do the right thing. So you're coordinating all the time. And crisis management, when you're talking about managing buildings, something always goes wrong, and how we respond to it is what counts. I've had clients when I've gone when I've gone to a client when something's gone really, really wrong, and I've gone and apologized, and the client says, it's not your fault. I'm not going to judge you on the mistake or the crisis. I'm going to judge you on how you handled it and what you did to avoid it from happening the next time. So again, that speaks to relationships as well. Russell, next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about player coach and if everybody's doing the right thing and working within. I just wanted to give you a very quick snapshot of what our career progression looks like across property management. So these titles are specific to property management, and you can see tenant service representative is really an entry-level role that focuses on communication with tenants, making sure they're getting what they need. Who do you call who do they call if they have a problem? Property associate is the next level, which focuses on a lot of the behind the scenes things for building and making sure contracts are being taken care of and certificates of insurance and a lot of things that are really critical to making sure that we're doing everything right. And it's a great role, as is every role along this trajectory, to learn the business, to get more and more involved. Property accountant is a role that no longer sits on this. It sits in a different division, but I mentioned that I started as a property accountant, and that meant I went from a property accountant to a property associate to a senior property associate, all the way up to a regional manager. And that's because I raised my hand. Every time there was an opportunity, I wanted to keep learning. The onus is really on you as an employee to learn, to be open, to ask, what do I need to do to grow? Raise your hand, take the chances, put yourself in uncomfortable positions, because that's how we all grow. But the positions really up to assistant property manager are roles where you can have a little bit of the experiences, but you haven't yet run a building. It's kind of hard to bring somebody in at the general manager role to run a building, to say this is the person in charge if they've never had that experience. But a lot of these roles up until that are really transferable in different businesses and different experiences. So I would encourage you just to be really open to what the possibilities might be. Next slide, Russell. The skill sets are really going to be transferable, not only in just property management and facility management. Facility management is part of our work dynamics, which Russell talked about briefly earlier, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But communication, key, right? No matter what that is, if it's communicating to the client, to the tenant, to internal people, to new hires, to your team, everything is about how do you communicate? What are your interpersonal skills? Those are things that we really can't teach you. You develop them over time. People can coach you, but you've got to really be open to, how do I communicate? How do I listen, right? Listening is just as important as talking, if not more. You got to be detailed. There are a lot of moving pieces, which you probably gathered on the slide of a day in the life of. Ton of moving things. So you've got to be really organized. You've got to pay attention to detail. I mentioned the financial skills and financial acumen. Think about it this way. When you're talking to the owner of a building, right? They have spent millions of dollars in most cases to acquire a building, and they're entrusting it to us to run that building. So they want to ask you about the NOI. They want to ask you about the rate of return on a capital project. You've got to understand what those terms mean, which also comes into play when you're looking at reading a lease and understanding the terminology in a lease, because those leases, they're voluminous to begin with, but there's a lot of financial acumen that's baked in there, and it's really important to understand that. Always have to be focused on customer service, whether we're talking to tenants or we're talking to the client, or even we're talking to a vendor that's helping us manage the building. They're helping us take care of our tenants and our client. So everything is about customer service. So there's lots of moving pieces. If you are someone who needs to follow a very clear checklist of this is my day, I'm going to tell you, property management is not for you. It is a kind of career where you come in every day you've got your list, you're organized, you know what you've got to get done, and something's going to happen and you've got to be able to pivot. So when you're pivoting, you're going to look and say, what are the most important things I've still got to get done no matter what? And a lot of other things are going to fall to tomorrow and the day after. And that's okay, because to be really successful in property management, you just have to learn how to juggle. You got to keep a lot of balls in the air, but you've got to figure out how you can move things around, change up your schedule, delegate a little bit differently. It's all going to get done. It all does not have to get done today. And sometimes that's the hardest thing that property managers struggle with, is how do I get it all done today? And nobody's going to get it all done today. It's a lot of moving pieces. And then another important thing, and we'll talk a little bit about JLL technologies, which Russell mentioned earlier, is you got to be tech savvy, right? So we're trying to get a lot done. We're moving fast. So you've got to be able to use technology. Excel and Word, huge. Email all day long. You got to be mobile, right? So you're on your phone, you're walking around, you're taking pictures, you're sending off texts to people. So you've got to have those basic tech skills. And then when we talk about JLL technologies, you'll get a glimpse of a little bit more of why tech savviness is really key. Russell, next slide, please. So now I want to talk just a little bit about work dynamics. And so I guess if we think about it, the best way to think about it is property management. If you remember back from the earlier slide, talked about it being in our market advisory business. And property management is local because that's where the building lives. And it is part of our markets advisory, meaning we are advising our clients on how their assets are performing. Work dynamics is more about the occupant, and it's not necessarily local because it depends on the client. So I'll give you an example of one client and a way maybe to think about it. So if we think about Bank of America, right? They're a big client. You see their name on a building. They may not own that building. They may lease that building. They might hire us to manage their facility, right? To manage their space, not necessarily to manage the building. There's lots of times when JLL is the facility manager managing the space that one of our clients leases, and another firm, one of our competitors, may be managing the building. So our facility manager is now working hand in glove with that property manager of a different firm. It's not as convoluted as it sounds, but just trying to help get the lay of the land between work dynamics, facility management, and property management. So within work dynamics, we really work with our clients to figure out how to best utilize their space. On the property management side, we're managing the building and we're managing the tenant relationships with the landlord, but we're not managing inside of the tenant's space. And again, I know that can be a little bit confusing when you're all hearing it for somewhat the first time. But to do that, to manage on behalf of our client on the work dynamics side, the occupant, we use facility management, engineering, so that's making sure their space is comfortable, skilled trades, which could be engineers, it could be day porters, it could be working in the mail room, it could be a number of things. And then occupancy planning, and I'll talk about that in a minute, workplace strategy, technology, which Russell talked about, and all of that we do with JLL Technologies, which is a separate division of JLL, but it's where we all it all comes together. And it's also fairly new within the last few years, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. Next slide, please. So facilities management encompasses all of these things: operations, repair and renovation, space management, comfort, the sustainability goals that Shana talked about earlier. We manage those on behalf of our clients in collaboration with their goals. So just like Shana talked about our goals and how we work with our clients, this is one of those examples where sometimes our clients really want to drive their sustainability goals, and it's our job to help them do that. So very similar, the skills that I talked about for a property manager, those skills are 100% transferable in a facilities management role. The two, facilities management and property management, are very similar. And I would venture to say that somewhere between 75 and 80% of both roles are exactly the same. The 20 to 25% that's different is pretty different. And we won't get into the nitty gritty of that, but the basics of both roles, property manager, facility manager, very, very similar. Lots of those roles go like this and are transferable. So we see a lot of movement in JLL from people from facility management to property management. We see a lot of movement on the properties management side from people that are managing office buildings. They move to the industrial business. They move from the multifamily to the retail. So we see a lot of movement, which is one of the great things about JLL. And as Shana mentioned, that we create opportunity for people to grow their careers. A great way to grow your career is moving around into different businesses and really understanding what the company does. Next slide, please. So, like I said, on the property management side, we stand in the shoes of the landlord. On the facility side, we stand in the shoes of the occupant, and sometimes that occupant is also a tenant. Next slide, Russell. So two of the things that I mentioned on a couple of slides ago were occupancy planning and workplace strategy. These are businesses where we are really consultative to our client. So we are figuring out, our teams are figuring out with our client how to best use their space. So if you think about, if you've ever been in an office where you see rows and rows and rows of cubes, and then you see offices aligned on the side, or sometimes there's offices aligned in the middles, and there's a million conference rooms around. Our occupancy planning teams are part of that group that says to a client, so let's talk about how we're going to make this space work best for you, right? What are we going to do? How are we going to maximize your space so that you can get the right amount of people and create that workflow that you need? So that's what occupancy planning does. We figure out, we used to say it's about getting butts and seats. So we want to know how many people do they have, AKA butt, how many seats do they need to house their staff? And occupancy planning works tirelessly with the client to figure out how to make sure within their space, within the confines of those four walls, everybody can get in and the space can function. And it is not a one and done, it's a constant planning. Similarly, with workplace strategy, that also is a very consultative business. And what we do there is work with a client and say, what's the growth potential? What do you see happening in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years? What kind of space are you going to need so that we can help them plan, not just for how to utilize the space they have, but should they be looking at bigger space down the road? Should they be looking at moving from New York City to New Jersey? Should they be looking at putting a call center in a different market where they might be able to attract a more attractive candidates to that type of job? So they work really closely with the client to think about what their business is and where the real estate should be so that their business can function. So it's very different than any of those hands-on making the space work day in and day out. It's about helping our client plan for the future, whether they're ramping up or scaling down. Next slide. And very briefly, I wanted to talk about JLL Technologies, which is what I said, everything comes together. And it comes together not only in work dynamics, but it also plays a big role in our property management business as well. As real estate management has grown, so has the technology that helps us do that every day. So building technology, We talk a lot about smart buildings. I don't know about a lot of you, but I try to make my house as smart as it can. I control most of my house by my phone. Freaks my husband out. But I learned how to do a lot of that from work. If you're a property manager and you're at home and you get a call from the security guard that a unit went down, you know, you can look on your phone, pull it up, see what unit it is. You can dispatch somebody right away to get to it, to take care of it. We have the ability to, from, you know, on your phone, to reach out and contact every tenant in your building to tell them something's going on. So, you know, if there's a power outage, you know, and I think about like in Hurricane Sandy, when I was in New Jersey and a lot of our buildings were down, we had to communicate with a whole lot of tenants and tell them what was going on because we had no power. We couldn't let them in the building. We had to shut everything down. So we didn't want tenants to drive to the building only to find out they couldn't get there, or only to find out that their key card wouldn't work and let them in. So we were able to blast emails out and text messages to our tenants that said, "Hey, this is what's going on. Don't go to the building until you get our, you know, our all clear sign." So those are ways that technology is really important. You know, data and analytics. Oh my gosh, I can't even begin to tell you how much easier things are now that we have the ability to get data and analytics on our laptop, on our phone, so we can measure how things are going. The sustainability tracking, right? The only way you really measure your sustainability goals and where you are is you have to make sure you're measuring, you're tracking every month, and sometimes more often, how you're using your energy, how you're using all of your utilities. Those things are critical. And JLL Technologies is like the smartest people that you ever want to meet, trying to constantly figure out what's new, how do we employ it, how do we figure out what we need and then replicate it really quickly and get people trained on it. So they're constantly looking at new technology. And what's really cool about it is every time they come up with a new technology, they ask for volunteers, aka guinea pigs, to try it out, to test it out, to see how it works, give them feedback on what works and what doesn't, so they can continue to fine tune it. So without them, you know, we'd be using a lot of Excel spreadsheets and pen and paper to track everything that's going on in the building. So I, for one, am super grateful that they're around. I know I went through a lot. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them now. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Sounds good. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate it. Russell, if you want to go on to the next slide here. So we wanted to talk a little bit about how you can view some of our opportunities and really what our application process looks like and some of the careers that new grads should look for on our careers page. Russell, thank you. So there's actually many different platforms that we use to get our jobs posted. The first one that I use quite a bit is Handshake. So Handshake is a platform that actually allows us to connect with multiple different universities across the US. So if we have like a role in Atlanta, Georgia, that gives me the opportunity to post this position through all the different universities that surround Atlanta. And you can find our jobs that way. You can also go to our early career pages through our career website and view all of our internship opportunities. And then just our normal careers page through our JLL website, you can find all of our different careers. For new graduates, some of the titles can be a little bit confusing, but typically some of the more entry-level positions either have the terms analyst, representative, coordinator, specialist, or associate in them. So those are some of the roles that you're going to want to kind of look for when you go to search for new opportunities. Russell, if you want to go ahead, thank you. So this is a little bit about what our application process looks like. We typically encourage people to apply around 3 months prior to their graduation date. This allows the recruiter to, review your resume and see what you might be the best fit for. Sometimes our hiring managers will post a role and they're looking to hire immediately. Sometimes they'll post it and they're not looking to hire for another couple of months. So 3 months is typically, a good time frame to apply when you're about to graduate. So if you go to our careers page and you find a role that you are interested in, typically what will happen is you'll apply and then we will review your resume here on the talent acquisition team. We'll look at your experience, and if we think that you might be a good fit, what we'll do is we'll reach out to you to conduct a pre-screen. And this is where you'll meet with the recruiter and you'll tell them just a little bit about your background, and the recruiter will tell you a little bit more about the role itself, who you'll be working with on site and where the location is. And then from there, if the recruiter thinks you could still be a good fit, they'll forward your resume to the hiring manager. And this is where you really get to meet with the team, and the hiring manager can tell you a little bit more about the role and really what the day-to-day would look like. We typically here at JLL, we're trying to work with the hiring managers to keep it around 1 to 2 interviews, no longer than that, just because we understand how fast good talent moves. So if we do think you would be a good fit for the role, we try to move quicker rather than, have multiple different interview processes. So from there, then what we'll do is we'll send you out an offer letter that'll tell you your pay rate, your start date, and the location of the role. And if you're all set there, then what you'll do is you'll sign the offer letter. We'll kick off your background check. Some roles do require a drug screen. So if that is required, then we'll process that. And then your start date, you'll want to make sure you'll post on LinkedIn and share with people of JLL. Here's just the job alerts app that you can use. So if you want to scan the little barcode, this is a little app that we use where, if a job pops up that you might be interested in, it'll send you a notification and then you'll be able to apply to the job. I think I saw some questions come through the chat earlier, so I'll go ahead and look through there.
Yeah, Michael, there's a couple questions. I think we've got a couple folks who are either looking to make kind of a mid-career move or are maybe still able to work full-time but taking some classes at WGU. Can you talk a little bit about what the process is like, if maybe someone's looking to apply for a position right now?
Yeah, so if you are looking to apply to a position right now, obviously, you can check out the careers page. All of our open positions are on there. I also post multiple different roles on my own LinkedIn page. So if you are interested, like in the property management field, feel free to give me a follow on LinkedIn, shoot me a message through there, let me know that you're interested, and I can tell you more about the position. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, and I think to add to, we post all of our positions at jll.com/careers, and I think we'd definitely go back to the recording and look at Linda's slide about kind of the different positions through the career progression. I think that was really helpful. And so if you don't see a position that you like, when you go onto the website now, I definitely would encourage anyone on the call to set job alerts because you'll be the first to know once those opportunities are available. And that's the quickest way to do it. I even have job alerts for other opportunities at JLL and just to see kind of what's out there and what opportunities are growing because it's always good information for me. So I encourage other folks to do that as well. Christy, I saw that you had a live question you wanted to ask, so I wanted to give you a chance to ask that.
No, I'm good. I was looking for the mute button. Wasn't able to unmute, then could. So yeah, I'm good on my questions. Thank you guys so much. This has been really insightful. I appreciate you sharing your expertise. No problem. Thank you, Christy. Appreciate it. I also want to kind of answer the question about we're hiring full-time positions while folks are still working on their degree. If your degree program doesn't require you to, or still allows you to have a full-time opportunity or maybe some flexible hours, we definitely encourage you to apply, and that's a conversation you can have with Michael or Shayna or anyone else or Linda or anyone else on our recruiting team, and we'll kind of point you in the right direction and give you some information on that as well. So we know that everyone is in various parts of their educational as well as career journey, and so we're able to support that in a variety of ways. And definitely, I always suggest if you see an opportunity, apply for it. You never know when it might be taken down or when they might be going into review candidates, and you would hate to miss that opportunity to be reviewed.
Yeah, just adding a little bit to that, Russell. I mean, I can speak on the property management side for sure. Not all of our regions require a college degree. A lot of it is more experience based. So, some cities we have leadership where it is required, some don't. So, like Russell said, if you are interested in a role and you haven't completed your degree yet, we definitely still encourage you to apply.
Absolutely. William had a really good question about, he's a U.S. citizen with facility management experience working overseas. Shana or Michael or Linda, to you all, do you see any barriers with that? Or, what are we looking for when we're kind of assessing, candidates for a specific role when different locations are on their resume?
I'll tell you that we often have people that are moving, relocating to the U.S. We're looking more for the experience than anything else, right? If you've been managing facilities or you're managing a property, overseas, we're really going to look to see what that experience has been, recognizing that, if there's different levels of experience. So for example, I recently was talking with somebody who was a senior property manager, and they had great operating experience, but they didn't have as much financial experience as we needed. So that's still not a barrier. It just means they might not be eligible for a like-for-like position, because that financial experience was so important to us, but that individual was a strong candidate for an AGM role and an assistant general manager role instead of a general manager role. So as long as somebody has that experience for the role, it's almost irrelevant where that experience comes from.
Thank you both. I also had a question earlier about who to follow on LinkedIn for data analytics positions. And I think my advice on this is general for any positions, and that the one thing I think I love about JLL employees is we share a lot about what's going on in our market or our roles. And so I highly recommend, if you're not comfortable sending a connection request, looking for some folks at JLL, whether they're brokerage or they work in data analytics positions. Use that search feature on LinkedIn to find any colleagues that might be of interest to you or have roles that you're interested in, because a lot of us do post about what's going on in our current markets and current opportunities. And it's a great way just to learn about JLL and be in the know when opportunities might open, or just to learn some news about your market, the market you live in, or the opportunities that you're looking for. I think those are all the questions in the chat. I don't know if I would give anyone a last chance to jump off mute before we close it out.
And thank you again to the JLL team for jumping in and presenting this evening. I had a quick question. I hear this a lot from our populations, so I always like asking, what's one thing that you might recommend to an individual thinking about applying to JLL, or maybe they have that would have them stand out from maybe some other applicants? Is there anything specific that you all really look for during that process that has somebody really jump out to you, whether it be resume, maybe it's during the interview process of something that somebody does? So any insight that you could share on that would be appreciative.
I can take a stab at that. I think when you apply and one of us reaches out to you for a screening call, be prepared, right? So it's a lot of basic things. Be on time. I know that sounds silly, but be a couple of minutes early to if it's a video screening, be a few minutes early to jump on. Be ready. Be in a place where you can talk. Be calm. Ask questions. We want to get part of that screening is to get to know you. Right. So if you are, and let me just say, we get people are nervous, especially if it's, early in your career, you're nervous when you're speaking to a recruiter or a hiring manager. And it's okay. And it's also okay to say, I'm a little nervous, so just bear with me because we get it. But do a little research about the role that you're applying for. Look at when we put a job posting together, the job description, and we give all the requirements, we recognize that a lot of our applicants aren't going to check every box, and that's okay. But focus on those things that you've got experience and acknowledge the things that you don't, right? Don't try to flub it. Be really candid. Bring high energy to that interview. Do not, under any circumstance, disparage a prior employer. Let that negativity go. That we don't want to hear about the negative stuff, because then in the back of our mind, are they going to say bad things about us too? So bring positivity to your screening call or to your interview. Let that person get to know you, but in a succinct way. So, I mean, don't be totally chatty Cathy. This is not the time, right? So it's answer the questions, let your personality come through, try not to be robotic, let the excitement come through, and talk about, why this is interesting to you. Not just I need a job, because everybody needs a job, but why this job? What makes you feel really excited about this? So we walk away from those screening videos. I do all my screening on Teams. I want to see people when I'm talking to them. So, just be yourself, but be realistic about where you need focus. And I just saw a question pop up, so I'm going to jump in here, Russell. What percentage of time can you work remotely in a position like property manager? So I'm going to give you kind of both sides of the answer. The first is not a lot. And that's because you have to see the property. So if you are in the office side, you really need to be in the office, pretty much every day. Now, that doesn't mean everybody needs to be there all day, every day, but you got to be there a lot, because we're taking care of our tenants, we're taking care of that building. It's really not easy to manage remotely. When you're managing things like industrial buildings, you're managing typically a portfolio. So you can't be at every building every day. And those buildings are a little different in that industrial tenants tend to have a lot more responsibility for their space than a typical office building. So in industrial, you're in the office, probably 3-4 days a week, and then you're out visiting properties and visiting with tenants. But we're a real estate company. We want people in the real estate. So property management is, if you are somebody that wants a remote role, as you see, I'm working at home, but I'm a recruiter. If you want somebody that, if you want a property management role and you want to be a remote employee all the time, this probably isn't the right role.
Amazing. I think that sums up. I couldn't have said that better about the advice or answer that question better. So I want to thank Michael and Shana and Linda for joining me today, as well as RJ for the invitation, and you all for joining us for the call as well. I definitely encourage everyone to connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you do apply to a position, let one of us know, so that way we can make sure that we let the recruiters know that we met you here today. But I will pass it back to RJ to close everything out, and thank you all for your time today.
Well, first, I just want to start. Thank you, JLL team, for jumping on, sharing some insight, answering questions. We greatly appreciate it. To everybody on the call, thank you for jumping in. If this is your first Career Quest session, hopefully you found some value in it. If you've attended some of the other sessions, hopefully, again, you found some great value in those sessions as well. A reminder, this session was recorded, and it will be sent out tomorrow with the questionnaire attached. So do take the time to go back and fill that out and rewatch the recording. A lot of fantastic information, especially on some of the slides. You can get some real insight there. But thank you again for the JLL team for jumping in. We greatly appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your evening. Take care.